to September, folks. You are listening to Walking Stories, the California Walks podcast, where we learn from the lived and learned experiences of the community and talk about urban planning, design, and how to make our streets safer. This is your host, CalWalks Co-Executive Director Kevin Shin.
And I'm your other co-host, Co-Executive Director Miha. Our last episode was all about youth and going back to school. We were joined by Chloe Dahl, a student in the Cupertino and Sunnyvale communities, who was looking for ways to make her community safer for her peers and to be able to walk and bike to school. If you haven't had a chance to listen to that episode, make sure you visit our Walking Stories podcast playlist.
This month, we're broadening the conversation back to all generations, young and old.
That's right. Many of us have recollections and memories, experiences walking with our families and friends of many different generations.
And today, we're going to share a few of our own stories in hopes that you can take a moment to reflect on those times in your life when walking with your friends and family made for a lasting memory in your life. Miha, how about you get us started?
Sure. First, I'll just say that walking has been a part of my life since I was basically a kid, since I was born. I was born in Eastern Europe, in Romania, and it was pretty uncommon for folks to own a car. And if you did, it was considered like a status symbol. Most families only had one car. Mostly the dad would drive. We thankfully had one car, but any chance we got, we went on foot, or we took the other public transportation that was available, just because in those times, gasoline and the maintenance on cars was really expensive. So my story starts in Romania. I spent the first few years of my life there. It's where I learned to walk. And I have some vague memories, some pretty strong memories. This walking story is more of a vague memory to me, but it's been reinforced so many times by repetition at family gatherings that now I can't tell the difference where my memory of it begins and ends and the family's retelling of it begins and ends. But it's become one of my favorite stories to hear and to reflect on. So one winter, my dad decided to take my older brother, my younger sister, and I to the library. And he worked a lot, so it was definitely a treat that he was taking us by himself. And so he announced we were going to the library, and we all had to get ready because it was winter, and winters in Romania at the time were pretty brutal. There was always snow. It was just traditional, probably Kevin can relate more to East Coast winters. Now things have changed. The winters are more mild, but I definitely remember snowy cold winters. I remember I had a coat that was made out of rabbit fur to keep me comfortable and warm. And me and my older brother were old enough that we could get ourselves dressed. So we were supposed to put on our jackets and our shoes, and then I'm sure my mom helped with my younger sister. So we bundle ourselves up and we get ready to go. And, just imagine a 5-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 3-year-old. We're all just a year and a half apart, going to the library with my dad. So he definitely had his hands full. And it was a snowy day that day. So the library wasn't too far, but it was a good 10-15 minute walk. I don't remember much about the walk. But when we got to the library and we climbed the steps, my dad looked down and saw that I was not wearing my winter boots. I had actually left the house in my house sandals. I had walked the entire way in essentially flip-flops. And I'm not sure what he did in that moment. I'm sure he was frustrated. I'm sure he was carrying my little sister or pushing her in the stroller. And here he had me practically barefoot in the snow. I had already been walking in the snow. We had to walk back home. Um, and when he tells the story, it's always very lighthearted and sweet. So I've never asked him a lot of details about it because I like to remember the way that he tells it. But knowing my parents, I'm sure I got a good scolding. I probably went home and had to sit in the corner. A very typical Romanian punishment for kids to stand in the corner, to sit in the corner.
I feel like that's
Um,
pretty universal.
yeah. Um, and I'm sure now being a parent that my parents had a good chuckle that night and other nights about it. Um, but yeah, it was just it's the first story really that I remember going on a walk. And it was cool that it was with my siblings. It was in the place I was born. But the thing is that the story is the beginning of a theme in my life and a problem with shoes, specifically having shoes when you need shoes. I have gone on many road trips, many trips to local places, and realized sometimes quickly, sometimes well into the trip that I entered the car barefoot and have no shoes on. So that has happened on longer road trips. Like we used to go to Arizona, first pit stop, middle of nowhere, 100 plus degrees. I look down, I have no shoes. How am I going to get, across the asphalt to use the facilities and things like that? So it's just happened so many times that it's almost like a joke. And the last time it happened was actually on a trip for Cal Walks. We were going up to Butte County to deploy the SCAGO human kit of parts. We were well outside of Sacramento County where I live, and I just looked down and realized I'm barefoot. And I had packed everything else you think you would need, work-wise and personal-wise, and I had no shoes on, so we had to stop at a store. I think we went to Target. I had to go in barefoot, which was really weird. I was like, "Are they going to let me in? Are they going to stop me?" But they let me in. I got some quick shoes, and we went on our way. And it's gotten so bad that now my husband keeps an extra pair of shoes for me in all of our cars.
That's
Um,
really funny.
But yeah, it's yeah, me and shoes. I don't know. One lesson that I take away from this is that maybe I'm not meant to live somewhere where we need cars and shoes, and I just haven't found my place yet. And the other thing is that, you know, walking anywhere almost creates an opportunity for adventure and for memories, no matter how short the walk is. And the memory that I shared is, it was no more than a 15-minute walk, but it's a memory that I, will treasure for a lifetime. And I'm sure my parents will chuckle at as they remember it and retell it over the years.
That's a really cute story, and I love the fact that that you don't even realize it. That most of the time you just walk out
I'm
barefoot
living my
somewhere,
life,
and
Kevin. Just
and
yes.
so like the bottoms of your feet, like the soles of your feet, must be tough as nails by this point. If you keep running out into into like all kinds of weather conditions without shoes on.
Yes. I mean, I think they are. I don't want to share too much, but um, I, growing up, thought that everyone's feet peeled once a year, like this, the soles of their feet, because that
Oh.
happened to me from walking barefoot, all summer long, up until November, December in SoCal, where I grew up. And I remember the first time I moved to Sacramento, I was talking to some friends and they're like, "What are you talking about? The soles of my feet have never peeled." And I said, "What do you mean? It happens once a year. It's like, a lizard releases its skin." And I just remember like, oh man, maybe I'm overdoing it, or maybe I've grown up very different um, than some of my friends. So yeah, definitely. I think I definitely enjoy walking barefoot. I wish there was more places you could get to barefoot, to be
Right.
honest.
And it's a good
In
thing that Target didn't have a no shirt, no shoes, no service policy, right?
exactly, yes, yes. But I mean, the barefoot movement, like, has kind of hit a funny turn because barefoot running is a thing. There's barefoot shoes coming out now.
Right.
So I think just something with being barefoot is very natural, very like just, instinct wise, along with other things like getting outside in your community, like
Yeah.
it's natural to want to be outside. It's natural to want to explore. So yeah, I do it as often as I can, wherever I can.
Definitely it sounds like you need to find a nice beach community where you can walk right out onto the sand and just
Yes.
sort of like make that your daily life.
Yes, that's the dream. That's the what I'm working towards anyway.
Fair enough. Well,
Well,
that's a great story.
oh, thanks. Uh, now it's your turn.
Sure. So also sharing a story from my childhood, and I'm going to start with sort of sharing the context. that my grandfather recently passed away, and just a few months ago had actually just had his 99th birthday. So he'd lived a very long life. But some of my earliest memories of walking are with him. So I'm going to dedicate this story to his memory. Like you, I was born overseas. I spent the first few years of my life in Taiwan, where most of my family lived at the time. And unlike in the US, where most families live in suburbs and drive to grocery stores, growing up in Thailand, most grocery shopping was done in outdoor markets that were very much akin to our modern farmers markets, but without all the overpriced pastries and scented candles and soaps and things of that nature. A lot less, a lot less hippie, a lot less hipster. Definitely a lot more real farmers out there, and just people trying to make their stretch their food budgets as far as possible. So even back in the 80s, Taipei was a very crowded place with scooters, motorcycles, and cheap imported Japanese cars kind of piled everywhere on the streets. And walking to the market with my grandparents was always an adventure. On many days, my grandfather would actually just scoop me up and sit me on top of his shoulders and carry me as we traversed the busy streets. So one day in particular, when I was at the market, my grandparents were busy looking at some produce, and I, in my youthful exuberance, wandered off. When they realized I was missing, my grandparents panicked and went searching all over the market for me to no avail. And then all of a sudden, I reappeared, acting like nothing had happened, of course. Turns out I had gone in search of a bathroom and apparently managed to find one. My grandmother said that she had been going to this market for more than a decade and never knew that it even had bathrooms. And as I got older, one of my favorite pastimes was walking with my grandfather to the local mall, which, if you've ever been to a mall in Asia, you know that they're not quite like the malls in the US. They are packed from the basement to the roof with all kinds of shops selling everything you can possibly imagine. And our local mall was a fantastic place for my grandfather and I to explore our joint love of all things mechanical, and also for me as a kid to go and play in the arcade. I certainly spent way too much money in that arcade and usually left with nothing but good memories. Although occasionally we would stop somewhere fun for a sweet treat on the way home as kind of a good consolation prize, mostly because I was terrible at arcade games and never won anything of real value. But after my family moved to the US, we only traveled on rare occasions to Taiwan for family trips during summer or winter vacations from school. And each time we went, I recall having terrible jet lag, but that lined up well with my grandparents' schedule, which involved waking up at 4 a.m. and heading to the sports complex across from their flat to walk the track with all of their friends. Despite it being ungodly early in the morning, there was a huge group of community elders who, for any variety of reasons, also could not sleep and were out and about. I was easily the youngest person there, but my grandfather was such a fixture with these folks. And just about every person we walked past waved, smiled, joined us for a few moments, and just to chat with my grandfather. And honestly, it shows how much just being present in the community allows even a single individual to make an impact on so many people's lives, including mine. So all of these memories are hugely important to me, and especially since my grandfather recently passed away, and they, mark a really important moment in my life when I sort of understood what it meant to explore my community. And even though after moving to the U.S., we became suburban dwellers and drove everywhere. I still have a really deep connection to walking, and anytime I travel and go overseas, or even just traveling to other cities across North America, the opportunity to walk and explore those cities is always really important to me, and I really enjoy that time. And a lot of that stems from uh, having these youthful experiences with my grandfather in particular, and being able to go and explore places with him.
Mhm. And I think what stands out to me is that at that young age, you felt comfortable leaving their site. Because I remember in the previous story you shared, you came to the US at a pretty young age. So you the environment, the design of it, I don't know, it's a market maybe. The layout of it, something about it made you at such a small age to feel comfortable walking away from an adult. And I think that's pretty rare. And to find your way back to the and the hustle and bustle of the market, I think is you probably have a really good sense of direction, or I don't know, maybe your grandfather's really tall. Could you spot him over everyone?
He was certainly not very tall. And in fact, my whole family is not particularly tall.
Mhm.
I'm amongst one of the taller folks in my family, actually. But yeah, I don't know. I think I just have an adventurous spirit, also a thing that I inherited from my grandfather.
Mhm.
And I think that adventurous spirit means that oftentimes I'm not afraid to do things that maybe are kind of stupid. Thinking back to it, it's kind of foolish, but in the moment, it just felt right, I guess.
How natural,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, and
Mhm.
it felt like the right thing to do. I needed to use a restroom and I had to go and find one. So
Yes.
somehow I managed to wander off and do that and find my way back, even
Mhm.
though I mean I'd certainly been to this market a number of times with my grandparents, and as with most people who do grocery shopping, your tendency is to follow kind of a route, right? You
Pattern,
sort of
yeah.
have a fixed route that you kind of follow through a market. And so somehow I think I must have figured out how, um, I must have recalled like where along the route they would likely be. And so I was
Mhm.
just I made my way to the bathroom and found my way back. Yeah, it's just one of those things that I certainly, my recollection of this is like you shared, is very fuzzy, but I've certainly heard this story many, many times from my parents and from my
Mhm.
grandparents over the years. And it is one of those things where I think it's a case of it's a case of one of those uh adventures as a kid that you get to have, where things are really fortunate and everything sort of works out nicely.
Yes.
Um, but it's also more than just, a story about a kid getting lost and enjoying time with his elders. It's really about like how friendly the design a place is. And so, a place like Taiwan, even many decades ago, was really set up in such a way, and it was designed in such a way that it made it feel friendly enough that I could comfortably kind of navigate the streets on my own. And you hear this a lot with stories out of Asia, particularly places like Japan and Taiwan, where kids feel comfortable walking around their communities and using public transportation systems, even without adult assistance or supervision. And a lot of that is the result of deliberate choices to create environments that are focused on designs that are easy to navigate for an 8-year-old or an 80-year-old.
Mhm. Yeah, or yeah, even younger for that matter. I mean, I used to walk to school at 5, 6 years old by myself. Many European countries have invested in infrastructure that it's just intended for all ages to be able to enjoy it, to easily get around. A lot of shared public places where people can congregate and enjoy each other's company, regardless of the age. And I think that so much of the world outside of the US is built that way, um, that it's very easy for any of us that have either been born, grew up somewhere else, or have traveled a little bit to point to places and to say like, hey, why can't it be like that here? Why are there so many other places in the world where the daily life is so different for an 80-year old, and over here, it seems like between 8 months and 80, you need a car if you want to get around.
Right. And like I said, I was recently in Taiwan to attend my grandfather's funeral, and while I was there, did not have access to a car, obviously, and yet felt completely comfortable getting around using their subway system, the MRT. And in fact, on my final day in town, I went hiking up Xiangzan, which is also called Elephant Mountain. Um, and really, it's more really more kind of a large hill than a true mountain, but it's sort of the central fixture in the middle of the city,
Mhm.
and it's one of these it's one of these urban green spaces that is really, very popular in places outside of the US, but also in sort of big cities like New York City with Central Park, that have these like amazing, really amazing kind of urban forestry type spaces. And so, the total elevation is not that high. It's just about over 600 feet. But the island of Taiwan had spent the last week surrounded by three typhoons, and the humidity was just brutal. You couldn't walk outside for just a few minutes without immediately just dripping in sweat. So on my way up the ascent, which is a lot of stairs, it's really well sort of laid out and designated, but it's just a lot of stairs to climb. And I'm picking my way past a lot of elderly folks. Like I was quite frankly shocked at the number of folks who looked to be well into their 70s and 80s, hiking up this trail and all of these steps at their age. And so I'm sweating my way up to the peak, and just about 30 or 50 steps shy of the peak, there's a public exercise area with shared exercise equipment like pull-up bars, sit-up benches, things like that. And already there, and this is probably, not far past like 6:30, bunch of seniors, many of whom, again, well into their 80s and 70s and 80s. And they're all there hanging out. They've clearly been there for a little bit, and they are there early in the mornings, and they've made this trek up there, and they're working out, which really goes to show um, that there's this dedicated culture and the longevity that can come from like being out in these types of public green spaces and having that exercise, that daily routine, can really be an incredible way to sort of drive your life and drive
Yeah.
your day. So this is a kind of community gathering that just doesn't really happen in places like LA anymore, because we have become just so car dependent.
Yeah, that's true. Our communities are just not designed to encourage this kind of communal gathering, at least not to facilitate it easily and naturally anymore. And the result is that young and old are isolated without the ability to drive, limited public transportation options, and with street infrastructure that's just not safe for pedestrians and cyclists. People simply have no choice but to stay at home, if you're not able to drive. And I think even if you're able to drive, there's well, and maybe it depends on the generation, but there's a kind of like a comfort level, of like, I'm willing to go to this place because it's this close after work, you know, like, and after that, I'm not going any further than 10 minutes from my house. Something about driving adds added work, at least for me in my mind, is like it adds
Right.
added work. Whereas, like, if you could just grab your keys and walk out the door, it feels simpler, easier, lighter. And yeah, that's why, I mean, what do we have in the US? We have Netflix and chill, right? We come home from work and we stay home because we just drove to work, then we drove home. And it's like, if I want to meet up with my friends, it would be easier just to either do it with those that live right near me, or, just enjoy the comforts of the homes we live in. Um, but yeah, so much of the world facilitates that so naturally and easily that it's not it's not a thought. It's just natural
Right.
to step outside of your home whenever you want.
Yeah,
Um,
and that extra step of driving presents just an additional hurdle that you have to
mhm.
overcome. And it does. I think you're absolutely right. It does kind of create that extra little bit of resistance, that extra little bit of friction to the idea of, well, I kind of want to go out, but I also kind of don't want to because it means I have to get in my car, then I got to find parking, and then I got to figure out like, I got to figure out how to get back to my car. And then if I'm getting drinks, do I have to, take a cab home? Like there's all of these things that sort of contribute to that little bit of extra friction. And it does create that extra thought of, well, maybe
Is
I
it
shouldn't
worth
go out
it?
instead. Right. Is it worth it? And maybe I should just stay home. And to some extent, right, that leads to a sense of isolation that has made our society a lot less friendly towards each other, and maybe in some part contributes to the continued polarization of our society and the lack of trust between people and this growing fear of crime, even though like crime stats across the country have been trending down for decades. Um,
Yeah.
we sort of get locked in this mentality of like stuff is somehow happening outside and we feel safer in our homes and as a result you become more reluctant and that friction of going wanting to go outside and experience the world sort of becomes even greater in that moment.
Hmm. Yeah, that actually made me think of, in Romania during communist times and even in the home we lived in, um, the yards had, 8-foot metal, solid metal gates. You couldn't see through them.
Hmm.
Um, and that design was just typical because it wasn't considered safe to be outside. My parents would tell us, all sorts of stories. Don't go outside. The gypsies will take you. Like I remember vividly as a kid, don't go outside. The hawk will come and carry you away. And it was just their way to explain to us there's danger beyond these walls. And I visited Romania in 2023, so just a couple of years ago, and visited a different generation, right? So my generation, um, and they're designing their homes very differently, more I'll say American style, open yards. You can see up to the front door. You can say hi to your neighbor. Um, and so you could just see how design, use of materials like affects how you live your daily life, whether it's walking or staying in. Um, And that design could also reinforce, like you shared, fears, whether they're based in reality or not,
Right.
and then dictate your actions. Well, that's really why so many organizations like California Walks exist, community-based organizations that are working to push back the tide of poor infrastructure and poor design, and just seeking to make communities more accessible to the people who already live there, regardless of their age. And I think, we can point to Taiwan, we can point to Romania, we can point to European countries, and it might feel like, oh, that's unattainable. Their communities have been like that for hundreds of years. But, really through our work, we've seen, small improvements, small changes to a design or an infrastructure or a layout that just create a totally new sense of place, change the accessibility for non-drivers, and create those, like you said, shared public spaces, communal places that bring people together. Um, and they are attainable, and that's why organizations like CalWalks is working and continues to work. And there's a lot of work ahead of us, but it's totally doable.
Right, for sure. And I think it's not just, oftentimes the examples are places in foreign countries, but it's not just foreign countries. There are places even in the United States and, just slightly more broadly in all of North America where deliberate choices are being made to make those streets more comfortable and uh, more viable and more accessible to everybody. And if we can create our communities so that everyone from 8 months to 80 years of age is able to not just make do with the sort of bare minimum travel, but to comfortably enjoy those communities, then we are truly setting up those communities to thrive. And so if we hope that, folks listening to this will take the opportunity to sort of understand what those communities can look like. And I'm certainly happy to share some links and thoughts in the description below. And of course, we'll leave a link to our website in the description so that you can find resources and ideas on how to sort of organize in your own neighborhood to kind of build or build towards, I should say, some of these more thriving and more vibrant communities, because I think that gives us an opportunity, again, to kind of create spaces for us to meet as a community, for us to engage as a community, for us to really enjoy each other's company.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, when we're exploring our own community, we can, you know, reflect on how are we using the spaces? How are our neighbors using the spaces? Um, and ask ourselves what could be done to make it feel safer? What could it be done for it to be more comfortable? What could it be done for um, someone maybe that doesn't have access to be given access, um, and for the community to really feel like it belongs to everyone, not just to drivers and not just to cars or not just to a segment of road users.
Yeah, and if you're in California and you need some help thinking through ideas, or you would just like to explore projects with California Walks, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can shoot us an email at info@calwalks.org, or our contact information is available on our website. And so feel free to use the web form also to just connect with us. And we'd love to have some initial conversations and see what opportunities are out there for us to help you identify ways to make your community feel more accessible, more walkable for everyone.
Yeah, thank you for joining us for this month's Walking Stories podcast. We hope you learned something and are inspired to help create safer streets for travelers of all ages in your community.
And you can support our work by visiting calwalks.org/donate or purchasing your very own CalWalks t-shirt at our online store. Unfortunately, I'm not wearing one today, although I am wearing one of our team polos. And so links are in the description, or you can visit us at calwalks.org for more information.
And if you have ideas for what you'd like to hear in future episodes of Walking Stories, or if you have a story you want to share, comment below or reach out to us.
And please make sure you comment, like, and subscribe, and share this podcast with your friends and neighbors who you want to inspire to join you on a crusade to make your neighborhood streets safer.
And a special thank you to the team at the California Endowment whose generosity helped to make this podcast possible.
Thank you for spending your time with us. We look forward to bringing you more walking stories next month.